Jessica had always believed she knew her father until the day she discovered everything she thought she knew was a lie. It started with a mysterious phone call, a message that hinted at a past she'd never imagined. Desperate for answers, Jessica found herself standing in the doorway of an old house she hadn't seen in years, a place her father had always kept shrouded in secrecy. Inside, she would uncover hidden truths that would shatter her life forever. What Jessica didn't expect was the chilling discovery that her father wasn't the man she thought he was. And as the doors to the past slowly creaked open, she realized that her world, built on quiet routines and safe lies, was about to unravel in ways she never thought possible. Jessica woke up to another day of predictable routine. Her quiet apartment, small but orderly, reflected the life she had built for herself, stable, uneventful, and devoid of surprises. The world outside often felt chaotic, but her mornings were a sanctuary. Coffee brewed as she sat at her kitchen table, flipping through the pages of her well-worn journal. Life, though unremarkable, was steady. Her job at a local law firm mirrored this stability. Answering calls, managing schedules, and filing endless paperwork, it was monotonous but safe. She was known for her reliability and discretion, though few truly knew her beyond polite office interactions. Jessica liked it that way. She avoided the office happy hours and the unsolicited advice from colleagues who thought they knew how to spice up her life. To Jessica, silence and solitude were comforting. That sense of control began to erode on October 15th. She woke up feeling different. A strange heaviness weighed on her chest, as though her body already knew something her mind had yet to grasp. Shrugging off the unease, she followed her morning routine, but the feeling lingered, growing sharper as the day progressed. There was no specific trigger, just an unrelenting tension that seemed to tighten with each passing hour. At the office, the buzz of phones and the rhythmic tapping of keyboards should have grounded her, but she felt detached. By lunchtime, she stepped out into the crisp autumn air, hoping a walk to her favorite cafe would settle her nerves. The cafe, a cozy corner spot with mismatched furniture and a friendly barista named Alex, had always been her go-to escape. She ordered her usual latte with an extra shot and sat by the window. Absently, she stirred her coffee, staring at the blur of cars and pedestrians. Even Alex's warm smile as he handed her the cup couldn't pierce her growing sense of dread. Back at work, her phone vibrated, breaking her trance. The number was unfamiliar, but something compelled her to answer. A calm yet firm voice greeted her. "We need to talk. It's about your father." Her father, the man who had raised her with quiet resolve after her mother's untimely death. Their relationship had always been distant, marked more by obligation than warmth. He was a figure of quiet authority in her life, someone who rarely shared personal details. They hadn't spoken in months, yet the voice on the other end of the line spoke with an unsettling certainty, as though it carried the weight of a secret too heavy to bear. Jessica's pulse quickened. She wanted to demand answers, but the line went dead. The rest of the day passed in a haze. Her usual evening routine, a glass of wine, a book, and an early bedtime, felt impossible. Her mind raced with unanswered questions. By the time she arrived home, her anxiety had reached a fever pitch. She tried calling her father's number, but it went straight to voicemail. The silence was unbearable. Then, as if on cue, her phone buzzed again. This time it was a text. "Come to the old house. We need to talk." Jessica stared at the screen, her breath catching. The old house was a relic of her childhood, a place that carried more unease than nostalgia. Why now? Why there? Questions tumbled over each other in her mind, but no answers came. With trembling hands, she set the phone down and stared out the window into the night. Whatever was happening, it felt like the beginning of something she couldn't escape. Jessica's stomach churned as she read the message again. The old house referred to the run-down property her father had inherited but abandoned long ago. It was a place of childhood visits, steeped in eerie quiet and unwelcome memories. She hadn't been there in years, and now it called her back with a sense of urgency she couldn't ignore. That night, sleep eluded her. Memories of her father surfaced unbidden, his long hours spent in his study, the locked drawer in his desk, and the unexplained tension that sometimes clouded his expression. As a child, she had asked him why he kept the house if they never visited. His curt reply, "Some things aren't meant to be let go," offered no clarity. Her dreams were restless. Fragments of her childhood home flickered through her mind: the creak of the staircase, the faint scent of cedar from the old wardrobes, and the locked door at the end of the hallway that her father had forbidden her to enter. She awoke before dawn, her sheets twisted and her heart pounding. The message on her phone seemed to glow with an otherworldly intensity. She knew she couldn't ignore it. By morning, she resolved to go. The drive was uneventful, but the sight of the house stirred something primal within her. Its sagging roof and boarded-up windows loomed like a relic of another time, a place that had once held life but now seemed to resist it. The overgrown yard swallowed the cracked pathway leading to the front door, where weeds pushed through the concrete like stubborn reminders of neglect. Jessica hesitated before stepping inside. The air was thick with the smell of damp wood and decay. Dust particles floated in the dim light, filtering through cracks in the boards. The silence pressed in on her, broken only by the creak of floorboards beneath her feet. Her pulse quickened as memories of childhood summers spent here resurfaced. Back then, the house had seemed vast and full of secrets. Now, it felt suffocating. Her father was nowhere to be seen. Instead, she found a note taped to the inside of the front door. "The truth is in the back room," it read. The back room. Jessica had never been allowed in as a child. Her father had kept it locked, forbidding her from even approaching it. Now the door stood slightly ajar, inviting her into the unknown. Jessica's heart pounded as she approached the room. The air grew colder, carrying a faint metallic tang. She pushed the door open fully, revealing a space that felt frozen in time. The room was sparsely furnished, with peeling wallpaper and a faintly flickering bulb hanging from the ceiling. In the corner sat an old wooden chest, its surface scarred with scratches and dents. She hesitated, but curiosity won out. Jessica knelt beside the chest and opened it. Inside was a stack of papers yellowed with age. The first document caught her eye, a birth certificate. Her breath hitched as she read the name. Emily Carter. The date of birth was nearly 10 years before her own. Confusion gave way to shock as she flipped through the rest of the papers. Adoption records, medical forms, old photographs. One showed a young girl with dark hair and a striking resemblance to Jessica. Her name was scrawled on the back, Emily Carter. Jessica's mind raced. A sister. Why had her father never mentioned this? And why were these records hidden here, in a house long forgotten? She was so engrossed in the discovery that she almost missed the sound of footsteps echoing in the hallway. She froze. The footsteps grew louder, deliberate, and unhurried. She wasn't alone. Jessica's heart raced as the footsteps drew closer. Every muscle in her body tensed, and her mind screamed at her to leave, but the discovery in the chest kept her rooted in place. Her father's words echoed in her head. Some things aren't meant to be let go. What had he been hiding? Who was coming for her? The footsteps stopped just outside the door. Jessica's breath caught in her throat. She slowly stood up, the papers slipping from her lap, their edges crinkling as they fell. She glanced toward the doorway, expecting to see her father's familiar, stoic face, but the figure that appeared in the threshold was unfamiliar. A woman older than Jessica but with the same dark eyes stepped into the room. Her face was gaunt, as if burdened by years of unresolved secrets. She had an air of quiet authority, and Jessica felt a pang of recognition deep in her chest, though she couldn't place it. The woman's eyes flickered briefly to the papers scattered around the chest before locking onto Jessica's. "You found it," the woman said softly, her voice heavy with both relief and sorrow. "I didn't want you to." "Who are you?" Jessica asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Her mind was spinning, trying to make sense of the impossibility before her. What is this? Why is my father? My name is Sarah, the woman interrupted. I'm your sister. The words hit Jessica like a physical blow. The world around her seemed to tilt, her knees weakening as the weight of the revelation settled over her. Her mind refused to accept what her ears had heard. She stared at Sarah, searching for some hint of a lie, some crack in the story that might explain the impossible claim. But Sarah didn't flinch. She stepped further into the room, her eyes softening. I know this is a lot to take in, she continued, her voice barely above a whisper. Your father kept us apart for reasons I never understood. But it wasn't your fault, Jessica. He did it to protect you. Jessica felt a coldness seep into her bones, her mind reeling. Protect me from what? What's going on? She demanded, the question coming out more forcefully than she intended. She glanced down at the chest, at the photographs of the girl she'd never known, the girl who shared her features. Emily Carter, her sister. Her other sister. Sarah sighed, stepping closer until she stood just inches from Jessica. Your father, he wasn't just a man who wanted to protect his family from the chaos of the world. He was part of something darker. There were people after us, after me, after you. Jessica's breath caught in her throat. What do you mean? Who's after us? I can't explain everything now, Sarah said, glancing nervously toward the door. But they're still looking for us, and you've just opened a door that's been closed for too long. The words felt like an avalanche. The terror that had been building within Jessica for the last few days reached its apex, and she could no longer hold back the flood of questions. Where is my father? Jessica demanded. What happened to him? Why didn't he tell me about Emily, about you? Sarah's eyes darkened. He didn't tell you because he was trying to protect you. The people who were after us, they know who you are, Jessica. They knew all along. Your father thought if you stayed away, if you lived a normal life, they'd never find you. Find me? Jessica whispered, her body trembling. What do they want with me? Everything, Sarah replied, her voice grim. Your father made a mistake. A terrible one. And now it's too late to go back. Before Jessica could ask another question, a noise faint, but distinct came from the hallway. Footsteps rapid and uneven, drawing closer. Sarah's face hardened, and without a word she grabbed Jessica by the arm. We don't have much time, Sarah said urgently, pulling her toward the back door. We need to leave. Now. Jessica stumbled after her, her head spinning with confusion. What's happening? Who's coming? What do they want? What do they want? I'll explain later, Sarah said, her voice low but steady. But for now, just trust me. As they made their way to the back door, Jessica glanced over her shoulder at the room that had once been the keeper of her father's secrets. And as the door creaked open to the dark, cold night beyond, she realized that her life she thought she knew was already slipping through her fingers. The world was no longer the same, and neither was she. The night air was cold as Jessica and Sarah hurried down the overgrown path that led from the house. Jessica's breath came in short gasps, her legs struggling to keep up with Sarah's swift pace. The crunch of leaves beneath their feet felt like the only sound in the world. Every step echoed in her mind as a constant reminder that something was terribly wrong. Behind them, distant voices rang out, muffled but unmistakable. The sound of boots hitting the dirt road. Someone was coming. We have to go faster, Sarah urged, glancing over her shoulder. Who are they? What do they want? Jessica's voice trembled, and her pulse raced in panic. They're agents, Sarah said, her eyes scanning the shadows. The ones your father was trying to keep you safe from. They'll do whatever it takes to find us, and they know we're here. Why? Why us? It's not just about us, Sarah said, slowing her pace to match Jessica's. It's about everything your father was involved in. And now you're in it too. I was hoping we could keep you out of it, but now it's too late." The night stretched on as they ran through the woods behind the house, the distant voices growing louder. Jessica's mind was overwhelmed, but one thing was clear: nothing in her life had been what she thought it was. And the storm that had been building since that fateful phone call was only just beginning to unleash its fury.